When Adonai Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard how Yehoshua had taken Ai and utterly destroyed it, he had done the same to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and how the inhabitants of Givon had made peace with Israel and were living among them. His people became greatly alarmed, because Givon was as large as one of the royal cities, larger than Ai, and all its men were courageous. So Adonai Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent his message to Hoham, king of Hebron, Piram, king of Yarmut, Yaphiah, king of Lachish, and Devir, king of Eglon. Come up and help me, and we'll attack Givon, because it has been made peace with Yehoshua and the people of Israel. So the 5 kings of the Emori, the king of Jerusalem, Hebron, Yarmut, Lachish, and Eglon, got together, went up with all their armies, pitched camp against Givon, and made war against it. The people of Givon sent a message to Yehoshua at their camp in Gilgal that said, "Don't ignore your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us. Help us, because all the kings of the Emori living in the hills have gotten together to fight us." Yehoshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the fighting men with him, including all the bravest ones. Adonai said to Yehoshua, "Don't be afraid of them, for I have handed them over to you. Not one of their men will stand against you." Having spent the entire night marching up from Gilgal, Yehoshua fell upon them, taking them by surprise. Adonai threw them into confusion before Israel, and defeated them in a great slaughter at Givon, pursuing them along the road that goes up to Beit Horon, and beating them back to Ezekah, all the way back to Machadi. As they fled before Israel down the road to Beit Horon, Adonai threw huge hailstones down on them all the way to Azekah, and they died. More died because of the hail than because Adonai had killed them with the sword. Then on the day Adonai handed over the Emori to the people of Israel, Yehoshua spoke to Adonai in the sight of Israel. He said, "Sun, stand motionless over Givon. Moon, you too, over Ayalon Valley." So the sun stood still, and the moon stayed put till Israel took vengeance on their enemies. This is written in the book of Yeshar. The sun stood still in the sky and was in no rush to set for nearly a whole day. There has never been a day like this before or since, when Adonai listened to the voice of a man. It happened because Adonai was fighting on Israel's behalf. Yehoshua returned with all Israel to the camp of Gilgal. But those 5 kings fled, hid themselves in the cave of Makhadah. And it was reported to Yehoshua that the 5 kings had been found hiding in the cave of Makhadah. Yehoshua said, "Roll big stones to the mouth of the cave, and put men there to guard them. However, you, don't wait. Keep chasing your enemies and attack those farthest in the rear. Don't allow them to return to their cities, because Adonai has handed them over to you." After Yehoshua and the people of Israel finished killing them off in a very great slaughter, till they had been destroyed, and the remaining remnant had entered the fortified cities, all the people returned safely to Yehoshua at the camp of Makhadah. And no one said a word against any of the people of Israel. When Yehoshua said, "Open up the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out of the cave to me," they did it. They brought the 5 kings out to him, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Yarmut, Lachish, and Eglon. After they had brought the 5 kings to Yehoshua, he summoned all the men of Israel and said to the commanders of the soldiers who had gone with him, "Come here, put your feet on the necks of these kings." They came out to put their feet on their necks. Yehoshua said to them, "Don't be afraid or confused, but be strong and bold, because this is what Adonai will do to all your enemies that fight against you." With that, Yehoshua struck them and put them to death, hanging them on 5 trees, where they remained hanging until evening. At sunset, Yehoshua gave an order. They lowered them from the trees and threw them to the caves where they had hidden themselves. Then laid big stones in the mouth of the cave where they remain to this day. Yehoshua captured Makkedah that day, defeating it and its king by the sword. Completely destroyed them, everyone there. He left no one. And he did to the king of Makkedah, and he did what he had done to the king of Jericho. Yehoshua went on from Makkedah, and all Israel with him, to Libnah. He fought against Libnah. Adonai also handed it and its kings over to Israel. He defeated it with the sword, everyone there. He left no one. And he did to its king what he had done to the king of Jericho. Yehoshua went on from Libnah, and all the Israel went with him, to Lachish. And he pitched camp against it and fought against it. Adonai handed it over to Israel. He captured it the second day. He defeated it with the sword, everyone there, exactly as he had done to Libnah. But then Horam, king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish. So Yehoshua attacked him and his people till they had no one left with him. Yehoshua went up from Lachish, and all Israel with him, to Eglon. And he pitched a camp against it and fought against it. They captured it that very day. He defended it with the sword, completely destroying everyone there, exactly as he had done to Lachish. Yehoshua went up from Eglon, and all Israel with him, to Hebron. And they fought against it. They captured it, defeating it with the sword, including its king, its villages, and everyone there. He left no one, exactly as he had done to Eglon. But he completely destroyed it and everyone there. Yehoshua turned back, all Israel with him, to Devor, and fought against it. They captured it, its king and its villages, defeating them, and the sword, utterly destroying everyone there. He had no one left. He did to Devor and its king as he had done to Hebron, and as he had done to Libnah and its king. So Yehoshua attacked all the land, the hills, the Negev, the Shiplah, and the mountain slopes, and all their kings. He left none, but completely destroyed everything that breathed, as Adonai, the God of Israel, had ordered. Yehoshua attacked them from Kadesh Barnea to Azah, and all the land of Goshen, as far as Givon. Yehoshua captured all these kings on their land all at the same time, because Adonai, the God of Israel, fought on Israel's behalf. Then Yehoshua returned, and all Israel with him, to camp at Gilgal. When Yavah, king of Hatzor, heard of it, he informed Yavav, king of Madon, the king of Shimron, the king of Echshaph, the king of the north in the hills, in the Arab south, and Kinrot, in the Shiflah, in the regions of Dor on the west, the Canaani in the east and west, the Emori, the Hitti, the Prizi, the Uvizi in the hills, and the Hivi in the foot of Harmon, in the land of Mitzpah. So they set out, they and all their armies, many people, in number like the sand of the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. All these kings met together. They camped and pitched camp together at the Meron spring to fight Israel. Adonai said to Yehoshua, Don't be afraid on their account, because at this time tomorrow I will hand them over, all of them dead, before Israel. You are to hamstring their horses and burn up their chariots. So Yehoshua came against them suddenly with all fighting men, and fell on them at Merom spring. Adonai handed them over to Israel. They attacked and chased them to greater Zidon, Misphot Maim, and eastward to the Mizpah valley. They attacked them till none of them was left. Yehoshua did to them what Adonai had ordered. He hamstringed their horses, and burned their chariots. When Yehoshua turned back and captured Hatzor, striking its king to death with a sword, for in time past Hatzor had been the head of all those kingdoms. They put everyone there to death with the sword, completely destroying them. There was nothing left that breathed. He burned Hatzor to the ground. Yehoshua captured all the cities and those kings, and the kings as well, defeated them with the sword, and completely destroyed them, as Moshe, the servant of Adonai, had ordered. But as for the cities built on their tells, Israel burned none of them except Hatzor. Yehoshua did burn that one. All the spoils of the city and the livestock of the people of Israel took booty for themselves. But every human being they put to death with the sword until they had destroyed them. They left no one breathing. Moshe had given the orders to Yehoshua just as Adonai had ordered to Moshe, his servant, and Yehoshua acted accordingly. He did everything Adonai had ordered Moshe. So Yehoshua captured all that land, his hills, the Negev, and all the land of Goshen, the Shephelah, the Arava, and the Israelites, and the Israel hills of Shiphlah, from the Beer mountains that goes up to Seir, to Baal Gad, in the Lebanon valley under Mount Hermon. And he took all their kings, struck them, and put them to death. Yehoshua made war with all these kings for a long time. No one city made peace with the people of Israel except for the Hivi living in Givon. They took everything in battle. For it was Adonai who caused them to harden their heart and come against Israel in battle, so they would be utterly destroyed, so that they would not find favor, but be destroyed, in keeping with the orders Adonai had given Moshe. Yehoshua at that time came and cut off the Anakim from the land, from Hebron, Devor, Anav, and from all the hill country of Yehudah and Israel. Yehoshua utterly destroyed them and their cities. No Anakim were found in the land of the people of Israel. Only in Azah, Gath, Ashdod did some remain. Yehoshua took the whole land in keeping with all that Adonai had said to Moshe and to Israel according to their divisions into tribes. The land rested from war. These are the kings of the land whom the people of Israel defeated, in all whose land they took possession across the Jordan toward the east, from the Arnon valley to Mount Hermon, and all the Arava eastward. Sihon, king of the Emori, who lived in Heshbon and ruled the territory that includes Ar at the edge of Arnon valley, the middle of the valley, half of Gilad to the Yabuk river, which forms the border of the people of Ammon, the Arava to Lake Kinneret, eastward to the Sea of Arava, the Dead Sea, eastward by way of Beit Yeshmot, in the south under the slopes of Pisgah. There was also the territory of Og, king of Bashan, who belonged to the remnant of Rephaim. He lived at Ashtaroth and at Adriai, and he ruled Mount Hermon, Silkah, all Bashan, to the border with the Guri and Maakati, the half of Gilead, to its border with Sihon, king of Heshbon. Moshe, the servant of Adonai, with the people of Israel, defeated them, and Moshe, the servant of Adonai, gave it to Reuveni, the Gadi, and the half-tribe of Manasseh as their possession. Following all the kings of the land whom Yehoshua, with the people of Israel, defeated in the area west of the Jordan, between Baal Gad and the Lebanon valley and the Bar mountain that goes up to Seir, Yehoshua gave this land, inhabited by the Hittite, Emori, Canaani, Perizi, Hivi, and Yebusi, to the tribes of Israel to possess according to their divisions in the hills in the Shiphlah and Arava, the mountain slopes in the desert of the Negev. The kings of Jericho, the king of Ai by Beth El, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Yarmut, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, the king of Gezer, the king of Devir, the king of Gedir, the king of Hormah, the king of Arad, the king of Levna, the king of Adullam, the king of Makkadah, the king of Beth El, the king of Tepuach, the king of Hefer, the king of Ephech, the king of Sharon, the king of Madan, the king of Hatzor, the king of Shamron Maron, the king of Achshaph, the king of Tanach, the king of Megiddo, the king of Kadesh, the king of Yochim in Carmel, the king of Dor in the region of Dor, the king of Goyim in Gilgal, and the king of Tirzah. making a total of 31 kings.